America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz, the CEO of Job Creators Network.
And you can subscribe to the show at SalemPodcastNetwork.com or anywhere you get your podcast from. So today, Alfredo, we are going to be joined by Heidi Ganahl. I'm so excited.
I am excited as well. I've been waiting for this one.
Yeah, I'm so excited. She's the founder of Camp Bow Wow. She's an entrepreneur. She was the Republican nominee for Colorado governor in 2022. She was the face of Job Creators Network's campaign against the joint employer standard under the Obama administration. The court blocked this radical rewrite of that labor law, and then it was overturned by the NLRB under Trump. I mean, she's just done so much. I can't wait to talk to her about everything that she's done. But first, let's talk a little bit about.
And don't forget, she was a board member. She was actually a chair of Job Creators Network. So lots to be thankful for her leadership and her friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. I always remember to say somebody was a board member of Job Creators Network, but Heidi has been such an advocate, not just for small business, not just for the franchise industry, conservative policy, but obviously for Job Creators Network too. So we just appreciate her friendship and
Elaine,
support.
I remember actually years and years ago when I first met Heidi out in Denver. I was mesmerized by the story that she had for us. I knew right away that she was going to be a leader for us on Job Creators Network, and hopefully one day she'll be a leader of Colorado and maybe even beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. Colorado would be lucky to have her lead that state someday, and maybe more. You never know. But first, let's talk a little bit about that NLRB fight that she joined with us and where it's at. Last fall, President Biden's NLRB once again proposed the joint employer standard. Can you kind of take a step back and explain what that joint employer standard is and what it would do?
Well, in simple terms, it basically, one of the primary reasons people have franchisees, or in Heidi's case, for example, where she established Camp Bow Wow when she was the franchisor, the person who comes up with the idea and then looks for people to have basically different businesses all across the country or in the state, for example. Those are the franchisees. They set it up so that you can actually expand those ideas, but really allow those franchisees to basically be their own business owners. And it's a great way, and has been for decades, really, for people to be part of the American dream, and in particular, actually, minorities. It's a great way for minorities to really get a piece of the American dream and be able to have their own business, because somebody else has kind of come up with that idea and the thinking and the marketing. And so it's a great way of doing that. But one of the primary aspects of that is that you are, as a franchisee, your own employer. And you're responsible for all the good and the bad that comes with that. And then as a franchisor, you hope that you hope that you grant licenses to great franchisees. But sometimes that doesn't happen. But it is really the responsibility of the franchisee should something happen. Now, Biden's NLRB wants to change all that again, just like Obama's did, and they want to basically break that tradition and effectively have the franchisees and the employees, better said, of the franchisees be effectively the employees of the franchisors. So basically holding them responsible for any and all actions that the franchisee makes. Look, if I'm a franchisor and that switches and that changes, you're going to stop franchising, or you're not going to be taking risk on new franchisees. You're just going to be awarding licenses and franchise licenses to those people that you already know, those franchisees that you already know. And so that idea of being able to use the franchise system for people who are wanting to enter the owning your own business, that idea, that all goes away. I mean, that opportunity goes away because you're just not going to want to do it as a franchisor. And so this is really, really going to hurt, I think, in particular, minorities. And we have to make sure that the American public understands that, because they make it, the Biden administration makes it seem as though all these horrible, people out there are abusing their employees. And that's why, they have to be considered liable as a franchisor for all of the violations that happen out there. But look, there are exceptions and there are people, unfortunately, things happen. But that's why you do have certain guardrails like the National Labor Relations Board to take care of that. But to completely blow up the franchise system, which has really, really worked for decades, like I said, is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
This is the bad idea that won't die, right? It just keeps coming back over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
But I mean, if this happens, Alfredo, it's not just the franchisor that becomes responsible for all of the liability of the franchisees who have bought into this system because they want to buy into their own American dream. Um, but the franchisee, the small business owner, whether he or she owns one store or 10 stores, they lose their autonomy. They're just kind
that's
of
right.
a general manager, really, and they'd
They
be
basically become
reporting.
employees.
Yeah, like what's the point of having the it destroys the entire franchise
Yeah.
system, and this bad idea just keeps coming. But what do you think the real agenda is here? Like, why is this happening?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is unionization. I mean, a large percentage of the franchise or franchisees out there are in the restaurant business, for example. That's an area where the unions have not been able to succeed much in terms of unionization, and they want to keep trying to make inroads there, and they haven't been able to. So this would go a long ways to help their unionization push. But in addition to that, I just think that model represents everything that they hate, the progressives, Democrats, which is freedom and opportunity. The idea that if you work hard and you play by the rules and you believe in your dream, you invest in your dream, that you can be a successful business owner and have a piece of your own, your own American dream. They don't like that, right? I mean, they want the government to control everything, and in this particular case, it wouldn't be able to control these small businesses. But once you start, trying to basically break that mold that exists currently, you really start messing with the system that's been working, like I said, for decades. And so, I think this is their way of really interrupting the free enterprise system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right about the ability to unionize these industries a lot easier if they're under one umbrella versus many different small business owners, and it represents over 13 million jobs. I mean, that's a lot of people to unionize and go after. And what a lot of people don't know is, like, for example, McDonald's. I think what 90% of McDonald's are franchise restaurants. There's not that many corporate stores.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people sometimes think about those larger ones, but there's a lot of them. For example, the Service Clean, the Janny Keen, which is janitorial services, a lot of dry cleaners, your I forget the name of the print shop right now. It's escaping me, but
Oh, Sir
there's a
Speedy.
lot. Yeah, Sir Speedy. I mean, these are all little franchises that people have an opportunity to really, like I said, invest in and get in, and live that American dream of owning your own business. And so, again, this is a model that has worked. Does it have issues? Of course, like any other model, there's always issues. But in the end, the opportunity that it has created as a model and as a system has just been tremendous. And so we have to make sure that this model does not go away.
Absolutely. I mean, just buying into a system that's basically in a box. Essentially
Yeah.
you've got the brand that's already established. People recognize McDonald's or Sir Speedy or the janitorial service. So they think, when they think I need this service or want this product, they think of those big brands. So you're already buying the value of
Yeah.
that brand. Then you're buying the marketing behind it. The franchisor many times will run marketing behind it as well. So you've got that going for you. And that strength of that brand can help you grow that business even more. So to take that away from somebody, who wants to start their own business, but they want to sort of start with a leg up. I mean, that's the best way to do it, is to buy into an existing brand like that.
Yeah, it really is, and I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with Heidi about this because, again, she understands this model extremely well, given that she established the Camp Bow Wow franchise. So she was the franchisor. She understands. She's worked closely with the development of different franchisees across the country, and so we should definitely take the opportunity to spend some time talking to her about this.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see Congress finally solve this problem, because that's what needs to be done, so it doesn't keep rearing its ugly head. Every time a Democratic administration comes in, because that's really where we see the push for it, is when a Democratic president is in office.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think we're ready to talk to Heidi. Let me spend a little bit of time telling our audience about her. Heidi is an entrepreneur and CEO, mom of four, and was the Republican nominee for Colorado governor in 2022. She overcame hardship via entrepreneurship and founded Camp Bow Wow, the Fight Back Foundation, and Moms Fight Back and She Factor. Camp Bow Wow was named to the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing companies in the country 5 years in a row. That's a lot of fives. As a result of its success, Heidi has been named one of Fortune magazine's 10 most promising entrepreneurs and among the top women entrepreneurs in the country by Parade magazine. In 2014, she sold Camp Bow Wow brand to turn her attention to philanthropy, politics, and other endeavors. Heidi, welcome to Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I mean, you guys have been in the trenches for so long, and I'm so proud of all the work you're doing and love this new podcast format.
Well, thank you, Heidi, and again, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We are really excited. We're looking forward to having you on, and again, I know the kind of schedule you have, and so any time that you spend with us is time well spent for us. So we want to just get right into it and start talking about you and your story. I mean, I remember when I met you, it was probably 9 years ago now, sitting in that restaurant in Denver. I was so inspired, so taken aback by your story. I knew you were going to be a great leader for our organization and really for the rest of this country. And so why don't you kind of walk us through kind of your story and how you got to where you are right now?
Well, thanks, Alfredo. I like to say my story is like a made-for-TV movie. It's pretty crazy. Um, I was, a kid who grew up in very modest beginnings. My dad was on and off a police officer and also had his own businesses. And my mom was stay at home for the most part. And they just inspired me to go out and get a good education and go live big. They were firm believers in the American dream and wanted that for their two kids. And so I got an education and got married pretty young to someone, Brian, who was very entrepreneurial also. And we had grand ideas of all the wonderful businesses we were going to start. And one of those businesses was that we wrote up on the back of a restaurant napkin was called Camp Bow Wow. And it was about a doggy daycare and boarding facility. And back then, doggy daycare wasn't really a thing. And so people looked at us like we were nuts that we wanted to do this. About 6 months after that, for his 25th birthday, our family gave him a gift to go up in an old Stearman, a biplane, like a stunt plane, with a friend of ours who was a pilot for many years with United. And they did all the stunts as a surprise to Brian. He was very adventurous. And the plane ended up crashing into the ground and killing both Brian and the pilot. And at that point, my life changed dramatically. And I went through a really tough time. but kept the idea of Camp Bow Wow that we had created in the back of my mind. And about 5 years later, my little brother and I got it launched in 2000. And it was a wonderful, wonderful just change from all the darkness I'd been through
Yeah.
to be surrounded by dogs and getting loved on. And that was the launch of Camp Bow Wow.
Yeah, I remember you walking me through that story, and it's just unbelievable. It still breaks my heart to hear that story, but boy, how you persevered through that and really, saw light at the end of the tunnel here and got out of that situation. Creating something so wonderful is just amazing.
Thanks, Alfredo. It was a labor of love. And I truly believe that that journey helped create so many new business owners that were also able to follow a labor of love through franchising. It's such an incredible business model. And I'm very passionate about the franchise model. And I feel like it's under attack right now, but that's,
Yeah,
we can talk more about that. But as I grew the business, I got really frustrated with how the government kept getting in the way of me building and growing the franchise company. We ended up building it to a $100 million brand,
yeah,
but despite the government, not with the government's help.
right.
So that's how I got introduced to you, because I was complaining about it. One of my friends said, "You've got to meet Alfredo and Elaine and this incredible group of warriors for small business owners." And that was the beginning of our journey together.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember you telling me some of the stories early on that you went through in terms of just ridiculous regulations. You would bring up some of these examples. I mean, I don't know if you can recall even some of those right now, but there were a couple of doozies. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about some of those because everybody likes talking about really successes, right? And how how successful it is, but boy, the heartache and the trials and tribulations they have to go through to be a small business owner to actually get to the point where you're creating $100 million business. I'd love for you to highlight some of those if you wouldn't mind.
Well, of course, I remember them well. The first one I remember is when the local zoning inspector walked into our first location and said, "You're not allowed to do this here." And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The broker said it was fine." He laughed and said, "Oh, those brokers. It's not in the zoning code. I don't even know what you're doing." And I said, "Well, we're taking care of dogs." So he walked me down to the City of Denver building. And this was before the internet was really a thing, and had this huge book with all of his zoning guidelines and flipped through it. And he said, "I think we're going to categorize you as warehousing commodities, and the commodities are the dogs." And I thought, what? That is crazy. And then he said, this was the kicker: "I want to protect you, young woman, from yourself and getting hurt from these animals. So I'm going to limit you to 15 dogs a day." And I thought in my mind, I'm like, there's no way financially this is going to work. So we
Yeah.
ended up having to move the business about 3 blocks over to a building where we could do what we wanted to. But that was my first experience in the government, the heavy hand of government getting in the way of my vision.
Yeah.
Wasn't there another story I remember about how many employees you had to have per dog, like per dog group or whatever? It kind of reminded me of how many teachers had, how big a classroom a teacher could manage, except we were dealing with dogs, which is a little different than children.
Absolutely. And it still is in existence today in Colorado. Colorado has some of the strictest guidelines in the nation for doggy daycare. And we had grown, I mean, we probably had 50 or 60 units open. And the Department of Agriculture came in and said, "We're going to change the number of employees that you have to have per dogs from 1 to 25 to 1 to 15. And I thought, that's as restrictive as childcare. Are you kidding me? I said, "We have this incredible safety record. We obviously care deeply about the dogs and want to do what's best for them. How did you come up with these numbers?" "Oh, we just know what's best for you." And I always remember that phrase that just epitomizes the government getting in the way of business, right? We know what's best
Yeah.
for you, even though we've never run a business, never run a doggy daycare. And so it completely changed our profit formula in Colorado. They also did it in North Carolina. And it was much harder to sell franchises after that because the profitability went down like 10% from what it was. So that law was still in existence. It still is in existence, I
Hmm.
believe, today. And it makes no sense. But a lot of what the government does doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know that at one point you were obviously helping us with a fight against the National Labor Relations Board and the joint employer rule, which under the Obama administration they were trying to pass, which really was going to threaten the entire franchise model. Well, guess what? It all comes full circle. Biden
It's
administration once
back.
again is trying to raise this whole joint employer issue, and trying to really threaten the entire franchise model. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and your understanding of what's going on?
Yeah, Alfredo, it's nuts. It makes no sense. It's going to destroy one of the most important industries we have in this country, franchising. Because if all of a sudden McDonald's has to recognize the thousands and thousands of employees as their employees instead of the franchisees' employees, which are independently owned and operated businesses, then everything's going to change, including the cost of opening a franchise, the cost of running the business. It's going to make it untenable for young people who want to start a franchise operation, or someone who's been in the business for a long time, to expand. It's going to destroy jobs and destroy economic prosperity in this country. I don't understand why they can't see this. The business owners are shouting it from the rooftops, just as we did a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. I know, Elaine, you had a couple questions on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, the franchise industry represents, we were just saying earlier, represents about 13 million jobs. And so when you think about sort of what's the agenda, I mean, is this just a union move? I mean, that's kind of been our thought, is that it's really just a way to unionize these large franchisors, and lump everybody under one umbrella.
Yeah, Lane, I think we know that Joe Biden's owned by the unions, as are many of the Democrat leaders in our country. And this is absolutely a union play. It's bad for our economy. It's bad for small business owners, just like the teachers union is bad for our students and education. It makes no sense. But a lot of what's happening in our political world makes no sense right now, especially for small business owners. In Colorado, in my governor run, I met so many amazing young entrepreneurs and business owners who are just dying under burdensome regulations here. And it's getting worse and worse. This last session was just burdensome for everyone who runs a business in Colorado, including my husband, who has 3 restaurants, barbecue restaurants. So it's not a good time for small business owners across the country. It's why it's very important what you're doing, speaking up and trying to keep these issues alive, especially when we have a press that won't cover a lot of this.
Yeah, that's very true. So Heidi, you actually a nice segue here into the next conversation here I want to talk to you about is your governorship run. A lot of wacky things coming out of Colorado. I'm hearing some crazy wacky things, but you try to take on a leadership role there. Obviously, very tough as a Republican, but talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing in Colorado, and your experience of running, because one of the things that we're really proud of is, just like yourself, we have another board member, Gary Rabine, who ran for governor in Illinois, and that's something that we want to encourage other successful small business owners to really kind of take on leadership roles and try to get out there. But talk to us about this experience, and again, the things that are going on in Colorado, and why you decided to make that run.
Well, I decided to do it because I've always been taught, even as a young child, to be the change you want to see in the world. And I thought, with my experience and background as a small business owner, as a mom, as a wife to an entrepreneur, as someone who's been involved in the political world for quite a while, if I don't do it, then who's going to do it? Right. And we can't let a bully like Jared Polis, our current governor, who's probably a billionaire by this point, who spent $33 million in our governor's race compared to our $3 million, just take Colorado and run it into the ground. A lot of the Democrats here try to say they're libertarian-ish. They're anything but here in Colorado. Things have changed dramatically in the last decade, especially for small business owners. I don't think I would have been able to start Camp Bow Wow these days with the regulations, the taxes, the fees. We're one of the highest taxed states in the country now for business owners. And we also are not using our money well. We have one of the highest crime rates in the country. 60% of our kids can't read, write, or do math. And it's heartbreaking to me. So we're going to keep the battle going. We're going to keep fighting here in Colorado, but it's turned a pretty dark blue here, and it's not good for business owners.
No, that's horrible. Did you say 60%?
60% of our students in Colorado cannot read, write, or do math at grade level. And they
Wow.
want money, 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 more money for the unions to hire more administrators. And as you guys know, I've been a regent at the University of Colorado
Yeah.
for the last 6 years. I chaired the finance committee and the audit committee. And to see the amount of money we are spending in education for administrative bloat is insane. We hired 45 new administrators at CU, at University of Colorado, during my term, and they've moved the needle zero. Same with K
Mm.
through 12.
Yeah, yeah, that's horrible. Elaine, I'm sure this kind of also leads into our current lawsuit. I can see your wheels turning already, commenting about this.
Yeah, Heidi, we blocked the Biden administration's student loan bailout, and we're basically waiting any day for the Supreme Court to rule on its constitutionality, and hopefully the court will uphold our win at the Texas in the Texas district level. But as you look at this administration and the overstep, the overreach of this kind of program, I mean, if the court upholds their program and they're able to spend $400 billion more, I mean, it doesn't do anything to solve the problem of what you just talked about, the administrative bloat within these colleges and universities. I mean, you've got presidents that make multi-million dollar salaries. Of course, football, I know that's sacred, you don't want to touch it, but it's a lot of money. These coaches make tens of millions of dollars. And you've got colleges that are building resort style amenities on campuses. And I don't think students actually connect the dots back to, hey, that's why my tuition keeps going up, or one of the reasons why it keeps going up. And then you've got all these administrators that are very highly paid. And in some cases, these administrators, they have as many administrators at some of these colleges as they do students. It's just incredible that Democrats and Republicans don't come together to solve this. And instead, they just want to wipe away $400 billion in debt from these students.
Oh,
Well,
don't forget to mention the $700 billion of endowment funds that they're sitting on.
Yeah, they could solve this problem hands down.
I hate to use this word, you guys, but a lot of it's a racket. And people are starting to wake up, I think. And I talk to parents and students about voting with their dollar and making sure that if they're going to invest in a higher degree, that they're going into a degree program that will have a good return on investment, and that they're going to a college that will do the right things and teach them how to think, not what to think, first of all. Second, the amount of money that is wasted on all these frivolous programs and classes that are not necessary is insane. Once you start to peel back the layers, and as a regent, I worked really hard to try and do that. But they like to hide behind, fluffy PowerPoints and good talking points. The money is wasted. It's not being put back into the classroom. It's being put into building bureaucracies so that they can continue to indoctrinate our kids, which is not okay. So the most important thing parents and students can do is to call out the politicians for trying to get 2/3 of America to pay for 1/3 of America that got these degrees that can't pay their student loans now. And the other thing is to vote with your dollar in sending your kids or grandkids to college. Is that the right thing for them? Right now, there's amazing certificate programs, accreditation programs, digital badges, all kinds of things kids can do to get educated and trained. I think education is going to move to the employer and away from the education space, which I think is going to be a really healthy move.
Yeah, Heidi, it's interesting because hear people grumblings from the administrators of these colleges and universities that it can't be done. They have to take those double-digit tuition increases year over year. But look at what Purdue University has done for the 12th straight year. I think just 2 weeks ago they approved no tuition increases for 12 straight years. Somehow they've been able to figure out how to actually run the university within the budget, within the means that they currently have. And so it can be done. And so, but the problem is we just keep encouraging it. And when Obama nationalized basically the college loan program to help subsidize and fund Obamacare, I think that's where it all went kaputs.
I think you're right, Alfredo. And I think that parents are starting to wise up. And I hope that they'll start investing in different ways to educate their young people and offer vocational training as well. We don't have plumbers or welders, and they can make a lot of money right now. There's a great website called goacta.org, the American Council for Trustees and Alumni, which has some tools that people can use to analyze what their kids are going to learn at a certain university if they're teaching civics and economics and the basics, and also what the dollars are being spent on. And Purdue is one of the top in the country. I think Mitch Daniels has done a great thing.
Amazing.
They also were smart enough to buy Kaplan and really take over the digital space, which is going to be very fruitful for them going forward and for their students.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you look at, what is actually being spent, and like Elaine said, and we have, I mean, I love college football, but when you look at what some of these college coaches, football coaches get, $8-10 million a year. I mean, really? I mean, while you have students that are really having a hard time just paying their monthly bills on their student loans, I mean, this is something that really, really needs to be evaluated. We've been pushing as part of this lawsuit, that we initiated, and now it's sitting at the Supreme Court. And again, any day now we're going to hear back from the Supreme Court. But we are pushing on this idea that we really need to start holding accountable these colleges and universities, and just this bloat, a bureaucratic bloat and expenditures that are just not adding to the actual degree, and are putting our families and our students in a position that, quite frankly, I do feel bad for them. I mean, I was actually a student that took out a college loan, but I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew what the degree that I was going to get to that was going to be able to help me pay off that student loan. But these colleges and universities, they encourage some of these degrees that really are just not going to be able to fulfill a career that's going to enable people to pay those bills back. And they're allowing that to happen, and they really need to be held accountable.
Yeah, and it is an arms race. Who can build the nicest, best buildings and dorms? And that was a constant battle for me to say, as a regent, stop investing in buildings and start investing in digital technology and ways that we can deliver experiential learning. That's going to be far more important. And one thing that shocked me was, I mean, here's University of Colorado. It's a $5 billion university system, one of the top in the country, a research facility too. It takes them 4 years to launch a new degree program. How can they stay agile and ahead of the curve with offering the right degrees if it takes 4 years? By then, it's obsolete.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Heidi, you ran for governor. Quite an experience. I know you and I had several conversations while you were doing that. Talk to us a little bit about that experience, and maybe words of encouragement or words of wisdom for others who try to follow that same path.
It was such a blessing in so many ways. I got to meet amazing people all over Colorado, from, the very wealthy donors in Aspen to the ranchers in Sterling, Colorado. I got to tour dairy farms and power plants and really get to know the heart of our state. And people are hurting right now. And so I wanted to just be a voice of the people, whether it was, they called me a mom on a mission fighting for education and common sense for our kids, or my role as a small business owner and an entrepreneur and trying to fight for those folks who are being attacked. So I will stay in the fight. Like I said, I'm not sure if I'll run again, but I think we've got a lot of work to do in Colorado to get back to basic blocking and tackling in our party. Nationally, our party has a lot of work to do. They were kind of MIA as far as helping us in Colorado. They usually stick to a few states where they think they can win. That's not how we're going to win back the Western United States. That's not how we're going to get back America. And so we've got to be all in, all hands on deck, doing whatever we can in whatever way we can to bring sense back to our voters and our citizens. 2 million voters in Colorado did not vote in the race. It was nuts. Wow. And we have to inspire confidence in our elections, in our politics again. So that's where my heart is and what I'm going to continue to do going forward.
That's great. And words of advice, words of wisdom for others who want to pursue the same path?
Just like I tell young people, you've got to try starting a business at least once in your life. You should run for office at least once in your life, even if it's for city council, county commissioner, governor, U.S. senator. It's an incredible experience. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, especially opening up Twitter most days. But I would do it over again in a heartbeat. And I have so many lessons that hopefully I can share with future candidates anywhere in the country. I encourage anyone who thinks about running or wants to run to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation and inspire them and help them learn from my mistakes and lessons so that they can win their election.
Well, Colorado would be very lucky to have a governor like you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I love this state with all my heart and soul. I've seen it transform into something that's unrecognizable in the last couple decades. But I do think that people are starting to feel the pain and waking up. And there have been many other blue states that have turned red, as seen in Florida, North Carolina, Texas was going blue, where people came to their senses. And hopefully that'll happen here in beautiful Colorado.
Heidi, you've been such a great voice and an inspiration to so many in the business world and, of course, the political world, and watching you on your journey and running for governor. But you did some other things along the way I'm hoping you can spend a few minutes talking about, and that was the Fight Back Foundation, Moms Fight Back, and She Factor. We've seen you kind of build all of these 3 projects up. Can you talk a little bit about them and the inspiration behind them?
Sure. Well, I think it goes back, Elaine, to how I was raised, and that was to give back to your community and always be sharing, your resources, your talent, your treasure, your time with your community, your neighbors, your friends, your state, your country. And so the Fight Back Foundation was created as a nonprofit to help young entrepreneurs who are focusing on products or services for kids to make their lives better. And then Moms Fight Back was created out of a situation with my own daughter, a really tough thing we went through. And I realized that moms don't always have a voice. They don't have the time or the know-how to speak up around really tough issues that our kids are facing, like sexual assault, suicide, drug abuse. So I wanted to figure out how to give them a way to speak out. So that's Moms Fight Back, which is doing great work. Just passed 2 pieces of legislation here in Colorado around child abuse and domestic violence. So Marilee McLean runs that now. And then finally, She Factor was a labor of love. I started it with my daughter, who's now 27. At the time, she was a senior in college at University of Oregon, and she seemed so lost. Like, she's usually this driven kid. And she was like, what do I do with my life? And I recognized as a region at University of Colorado that a lot of young women were like that. So I wrote a book called The She Factor, and it's basically a methodology to creating a life you love for young girls in their 20s. And it's so fun to see the women light up when they figure out kind of what direction they want to head, how to use their talents, and how we can support them in doing so. And then we built a digital platform around it. We took a little time off on the governor's race because I put my daughter to work on the governor's race too, but we're getting things ramped up again. And there's lots of exciting stuff ahead for The She Factor is the handle, The She Factor on Instagram and all the different social media platforms.
So The She Factor, if our listeners want to go check it out.
Yes, and the book's available on Amazon. It's a fun read for even older women, those of us that are still confused about what we want to do with our lives.
Exactly. You are also, so now you are also hosting your own podcast. Tell us about that. Tell us how we can find it and listen as well.
Well, the funny thing about the governor's race or any big race like that is you're going 110 miles an hour. And then the next day you wake up, whichever way it happened, either you're still going 110 or you go 0. And it's like bizarre. You have all these incredible stories and these lessons that you learned and this knowledge that you gained behind the scenes. And I wanted to share that. I promised myself when I was running, no matter how sad or upset or hurt I was if I didn't win the race, that I wouldn't go away like so many other candidates do. And I'm proud of many of us who ran for governor in this last election that are still in the mix and trying to make a difference. And so Unleashed is a nod to my Camp Bow Wow days, but it's also a way to say that I'm unleashed now. I don't have to be so constrained about, saying what a good governor candidate should say. I can tell it like it is. And we're on episode number 14 now since the election, telling truth. I call it Truth, Lies, and Politics. It's super fun. We have great guests and trying to tell stories that a lot of people don't know about.
That's great. And where can listeners find your podcast?
So we're on all the different platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If they want to watch the video version, you can find it on YouTube and Rumble, although we've been a little too edgy for YouTube lately. So I don't know if we'll still be there in a few weeks, but we'll be on Rumble and also on our social media. And this week, we're going to do a deep dive into who is Jared Polis and how is he connected to the Aspen Institute and World Economic Forum. We have the Aspen Ideas Fest this week up here, and lots of controversial figures. So we're going to do a little deep dive, a little investigative work, and talk about who is this guy who could be a potential presidential candidate if Joe Biden steps out for some reason. A few things going on in his world. So I'm excited about this coming episode. They come out every Thursday.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're remaining a thorn in Jared Polis's side on a regular basis.
Happy to oblige. I was shocked at how naive people were about how far left he really is and how just obscene some of his policies are. We are a trans tourism state. We have the most extreme abortion law in the country now, and one of the most regulated business environments in the country. This is not a libertarian free society anymore in Colorado. It's becoming a playground for the left and a model for what they want to do to other states around the country, but called the blueprint here in Colorado. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and try and warn other states about what's coming.
That's great, Heidi. Like I said, you're just such an inspiration. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
Well, it's summertime and I have 4 kids and it's pretty crazy in this house. So I'm doing a lot of mom stuff, but I am just really like homing in on what I want to focus on, like what battles I want to fight. I love this country with all my heart and soul. I've been blessed to live the American dream. That's what I want to continue to fight for in whatever I do. I'll continue to do the podcast. I'm going to continue to speak out and try and warn people about what they've done in Colorado and how they're trying to take it national. But I will always support Job Creators Network and the work that you guys are doing. Keep up all the great support you're doing for small business owners across the street and Main Street.
Well, thank you very much, Heidi. And, there's always room for one more presidential candidate at the national level for this year. So if you're finding yourself wanting to do something, we could always use a great president.
I think I'll put that on the back burner for now, Alfredo. I heard you announced your non-presidential run, so I'm proud of you for that. I'll do the same.
Well, Heidi, thank you so much for joining us. We love catching up with you. It's been a while since you were so busy on the trail, but thanks for taking the time with us and joining us on our new podcast, Main Street Matters, America's Small Business Megaphone. Please subscribe to the podcast at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Thanks so much, Heidi.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks, you guys.